Hello, my name is Richard Avila. I'm a 69-year-old Vietnam veteran. I came to the United States at the age of 16 months, and so it stands to reason that I had no choice or control over my coming to the U.S. My parents made that decision, and when they did, they had the right idea and did, in fact, make the right choice. When they finally decided to migrate from Mexico in 1956, my parents believed that America was the land of opportunity, a place where they could raise a family, and they were absolutely right. My father had actually come to the U.S. about 5 years prior to bringing his family to live with him. During those first 5 years, he worked hard to save money and prepare the home where he would eventually bring his family to live, all as legal U.S. residents. In those first 5 years, my father also made sure that all of the paperwork was correct and that everything was legal for his family of eight, two parents and six children, to finally move to the United States. I began my basic education in 1960 at Belvedere Elementary School in Los Angeles, California. And in 1972, I graduated and received my diploma from James A. Garfield High School, also in Los Angeles, California. Once I started my schooling, it didn't take me long before I knew the Pledge of Allegiance by heart. And now, today, whenever I hear that iconic pledge or the national anthem, it brings tears to my eyes. It makes me cry because those things mean something to me. They mean something because I'm an American of Mexican descent, but nonetheless American. And I'm an American who has always had a profound love for country. I proved my love and my allegiance to country when I enlisted in the U.S. Armed Forces during the Vietnam War. I remember when my older cousin, who I looked up to very much, when he volunteered for the military and became a paratrooper in the U.S. Army Airborne. I always wanted to follow in his footsteps, so I believe that it was his enlistment that actually started my thought process about one day serving in the military. I was a junior at Garfield when we got the news that my cousin had been wounded in action and that he eventually lost his life. That was when I went from thinking one day serving in the military to enlisting in the military ASAP. As it turned out, during my senior year in high school, military recruiters from all branches came to Garfield and held a forum. My mind had already been made up, but I was still only B-17 when I graduated. And at the forum, I learned that parental consent is needed if under 18 years of age. I wouldn't be 18 for another 6 months, and as I said, I was looking to sign up as soon as possible. So I talked to my parents. My father believed that everyone has an obligation and had a duty to serve in the military, but my mother was still thinking of what happened to my cousin. After many hours of back and forth, we finally came to the consensus that I did have an obligation and that they would give consent. I decided that I would enlist in the Marine Corps, and shortly after graduation, I entered boot camp. After boot camp, I learned that I would not be going to an infantry battalion, what I was hoping for because I wanted to avenge my cousin's death. But because of my higher test scores, I was instead assigned to the 1st Marine Air Wing and given the MOS of 6113, Helicopter Crew Chief. After training and a short time at Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, I deployed overseas and was assigned to HMH 462, stationed at Naval Air Station Subic Bay, the Philippines. But en route to Subic Bay, we had a 30-day layover at Marine Corps Air Station Fatima in Okinawa, and that was when my life took its worst turn. I was reunited with some friends from El Toro who had unfortunately got deep into drugs. I resisted their attempts to get me to try some for as long as I could, but the peer pressure was too much for an 18-year-old kid thousands of miles away from home, and so I succumbed. For the next 12 months overseas, I used drugs heavily and committed gross dereliction of duty. My life was spiraling out of control, and it was pretty obvious that I was going to get an early discharge. So when my emergency leave came in, it only sealed the deal for the early discharge. I was given the leave because my brother had passed away in the U.S. and my family requested that I be present for the services. So along with my leave papers, orders were attached to report to Camp Pendleton for discharge. At Pendleton, I was handed my other than honorable discharge papers, escorted to the back gate, and told that I was forbidden from setting foot on any military installation ever again. I was thrown back into society and civilian life with a full blown drug addiction, without any attempt at treatment or rehabilitation whatsoever. So my addiction took me to places and to things that I would never have imagined otherwise. Most often it was incarceration. For the next 30 plus years, I was in and out of jail for crimes I committed just to get money, just to buy drugs. Very seldom did I use the money that I had to buy food or clothing. My priority, my lifeblood was drugs. There's a saying in some rooms: we lived to use and used to live. And sadly, that's so very true. By the grace of God, in 2004, I was introduced to a group that would eventually help me change my life. And today, I've been drug free for over 20 years. I will always consider those in my group the most trusted and dear friends I have ever had. I owe them my life. It's so sad, but because of the U.S. government's inability to distinguish between who should and should not be deported, I, a military veteran, find myself exiled in Mexico, exiled and cut off from any support of my country, the country I loved and volunteered to defend during a time of war. Not even the fact that I was in rehab and that I've been clean for over 20 years matters. I am deported and cut off from any kind of real medical help. And unless you've been here, you really don't know how bad government healthcare is in Mexico. The old and unemployed have it the worst, because unless they have money for private medical attention, many of them die. Deaths that are very preventable and are in fact prevented in the U.S. healthcare system. And it scares me to think how easily I can become one of those preventable deaths. My last words to you are: how dare you kick someone out of your home when that same someone helped to defend your home?